There is a motorcycle that cannot go fast. Its top speed is about 35 miles an hour, and most of the time it travels closer to walking pace. It has 7 horsepower, less than a lawnmower and a chainsaw put together. By every number that sells a motorcycle, it is a failure. And yet this machine will climb a slope so steep a person would need both hands to keep from sliding back down it. It will pull a load 10 times heavier than itself. It will cross a river, not by riding through it, but by floating. Both of its wheels are driven, and inside those wheels it carries its own fuel. It is called the Rokon Trail-Breaker, and it was built on a single stubborn idea: not to be the fastest thing on 2 wheels. To be the one thing on 2 wheels that could go absolutely anywhere. Start with the numbers, because they are the whole argument. The Trailbreaker weighs about 218 pounds dry, under 100 kilograms. A grown person can pick up one end of it and drag it. Its engine on the modern machine is a single-cylinder Kohler of 208 cubic centimeters, making around 7 horsepower at 3,600 revolutions per minute. That is all. There is no radiator, no fairing, no chrome, nothing that is not there to do a job. Now the other column. It will climb a grade of 60%. It will tow up to 2,000 pounds, close to a full ton, roughly 9 times its own weight. Its tyres run at about 3 pounds per square inch, almost flat, so the rubber spreads out and grips the ground like a paw. It has around 15 inches of clearance under it, so rocks and stumps pass beneath instead of stopping it. On a truly steep hill, it does not stall and slide backward. It just slows down, sometimes to half a mile an hour, and keeps crawling upward. A person on foot could pass it, but the Rokon will reach the top, and the person quite often will not. Everything that makes an ordinary motorcycle quick has been thrown away here in exchange for one thing: traction. To understand why that trade works, you have to understand what usually goes wrong. Point an ordinary motorcycle up a steep, loose hill and open the throttle. All the power goes to the single rear wheel. The rear wheel digs in, the front goes light, and the machine tries to flip over backward, throwing the rider off the tail. That is the wheelie that ends in the dirt. The front wheel, meanwhile, is doing nothing but rolling and steering. On a hill, it is dead weight. The Rokon fixes this by making the front wheel pull too. It is one of the very few production motorcycles ever built with 2-wheel drive, and the way it delivers power to the front is the heart of the machine. From the engine, the drive runs first through an automatic torque converter, a self-adjusting clutch with no lever to pull. That single choice matters more than it sounds. It means the machine will idle its way up a cliff face without stalling, and it means the rider's hands and feet are free for balance, instead of feathering a clutch on a 45-degree slope. From the converter, a 3-speed selector splits the power 2 ways. To the rear wheel, it goes the ordinary way by chain. To the front wheel, it takes a stranger path. A shaft runs forward along the top tube of the frame, the very backbone of the motorcycle, up to the steering head. There it passes through a universal joint, so the shaft can keep turning even as the handlebars turn side to side. Below that, a small set of bevel gears, a mitre box, sends the power downward, and a second chain carries it to the front wheel, so both wheels are turning under power at once. The front wheel pulls the machine forward and down into the ground, the rear wheel pushes, and instead of lifting off, the front end stays planted. The Rokon does not wheelie because with both ends clawing at the earth it cannot afford to, but 2 driven wheels create a problem of their own. In a turn, the front wheel travels a longer path than the rear, so it needs to spin faster. Lock both wheels to 1 speed and in a corner they fight each other and the machine crabs and skids. Charlie Fehn, the man who first drew this motorcycle, solved that with a device he called an override clutch. It allows the front wheel to run faster than the rear when the geometry of a turn demands it, and it quietly disconnects the front drive altogether when the handlebars are turned to full lock. His clutch was clever enough that a version of it is still inside the machine today, more than 60 years later. The early Rokon carried another surprise as well. At a time when almost every motorcycle still stopped on drum brakes, it wore a disc, one of the first on any production 2-wheeler. Then there are the wheels themselves. They are not spoked and they are not solid. They are hollow aluminum drums, and that is not a styling choice. Emptied out, they hold enough trapped air to float the whole motorcycle. A rider can wade a Rokon into a river, let the wheels carry it across like a raft and walk it out the far bank. Or the same hollow drums can be filled, each one holding up to about 2.5 gallons of fuel or water, roughly 9.5 litres each. That is the choice the machine offers at the start of a hard day. Leave the wheels empty and swim. Fill them and ride much farther into country where there is no gas station and no clean water for 100 miles. The wheels are either a boat or a jerry can, depending on what the day requires. On top of that, the engine can drive a power takeoff, a spinning output that runs a pump, a saw, or a winch, so the motorcycle can pull itself up a cliff on a rope. It reels in through its own wheel. None of this came from a corporation or a design studio. It came from one man in the California desert. Charlie Fehn of San Bernardino began working on a two-wheel drive motorcycle around 1958. He filed patents and abandoned them through the early 60s, refining the drive and the override clutch until a patent was finally granted to him in 1966. He also worked out the hollow, load-carrying wheels. The core of the Trail-Breaker, the whole strange logic of it, is his. There is a more romantic origin story, and it is worth telling precisely because it is probably not true. For years the machine was tied to J.B. Nethercutt, the wealthy owner of a cosmetics company, and the tale went that the idea was born on an African safari when Nethercutt and his sons grew tired of a Land Rover bogging down in the bush and dreamed of a vehicle that could not get stuck. It is a good story, but the historians who have dug through the paperwork point instead to the quiet Californian with the patents. What is documented is that Nethercutt's company bought Fehn's design and built early versions of the machine with a small West Bend, two-stroke engine of 134 cubic centimeters. The Safari is a legend. The patents are the fact. The name that stuck came from somewhere just as plain. A distributor named Orla Larson took over the project in the middle of the 1960s. He ran a ski lodge, and the lodge was called On the Rocks. From those three words he coined Rokon. The company drifted north and east from California to Vermont, and in 1969 it settled in Keene, New Hampshire, in the hard, rocky hill country where a machine like this actually made sense. And here the story turns, because a miracle of engineering is not the same thing as a healthy business. The Trail-Breaker was slow, it was expensive, and it was built almost entirely by hand in tiny numbers. It was never going to sell like a Honda. Through the late 1960s and 70s, the company bled money. There was a loss of around $250,000 in 1971, and a major investor walked away. Then, in a decision that still seems baffling, this maker of unhurried hill climbers built a fast racing bike, the RT340, and poured development money into competition. The racing program, by the account of the company's own historians, helped drive it to its knees. By 1978, Rokon was in receivership. The machine that could climb anything had run out of road. It should have ended there. It did not, because the Rokon kept being rescued by people who simply refused to let it die. In 1981, two men, Robert Corpy and Richard Niemela, bought the wreck of the company and restarted it. It changed hands again over the following years and moved again through Vermont and Massachusetts towns, until in the year 2002 it landed in Rochester, New Hampshire, where it is still made today. And it is made the way it always was, by hand, in batches so small that the entire operation, by some accounts, runs on a mere handful of people, each machine taking hours to bolt together one at a time. The engine kept changing to suit whoever needed the thing. The little West Bend two-stroke of the early years gave way over time. At the end of the 1990s, the company even built a small run of diesel Rokons for mines in Mexico, where a spark ignition engine was a hazard, and a machine that could crawl through a tunnel on almost no fuel was worth its weight. Eventually it settled on the four-stroke Kohler it carries now. Through all of it, the shape and the idea stayed the same. Only the heart was swapped out, again and again, for whatever the customer needed to survive. Because while the business nearly died over and over, the machine kept doing the one thing it was built for. It went where nothing else could. The United States Army took Rokons to Vietnam. By some accounts, Marines carried them into the Gulf War in 1990, hand-painting them for the desert. Forest rangers and fish and game wardens rode them into the backcountry across dozens of states. Hunters used them to haul game out of country a truck could never reach. Trail crews used them to build the very paths that other people would later hike on foot. Prospectors and treasure hunters took them into the empty places. The naturalist Jim Fowler from the old television program Wild Kingdom took a Trail-Breaker across Africa, and the machine he rode sits in the company's museum today. At its peak, roughly a third of production went overseas, to Japan, to Africa, to Iran, to Chile. Compare it to the machine most people would reach for now, the four-wheeled all-terrain vehicle The quad. A quad weighs 3 or 4 times as much. When a quad is stuck, it stays stuck, because no one is lifting 600 or 700 pounds out of a bog by hand. The Rokon, at under 100 kilograms, can be dragged, lifted, winched, or floated out of trouble by one determined person. It fits down a trail 30 inches wide where the quad simply cannot follow. It gives up speed and comfort and almost everything else, and in return it is very nearly impossible to truly strand. There is a certain kind of person who understands that trade in their bones, and today they are the people who keep the company alive. Hunters, backcountry rangers, and a growing following of people preparing for the day the roads stop working, drawn to a machine that needs no road, little fuel, and no computer to run. That is the whole paradox standing on 2 wheels. In an industry built on horsepower and top speed, on the endless race to be the quickest thing on the road, one small company in New Hampshire has spent more than 60 years building the opposite, a motorcycle that is proud of being slow. That measures itself not in miles per hour, but in whether it reaches the top of the hill, the far side of the river, the place with no road at all. You can still buy one new. There is the Scout, the Trail-Breaker, and a road-legal version called the Ranger, and the price today runs from somewhere under $9,000 to a little over 10. Each one is built to the same recipe that was old before most of the people buying them were born. And that is the quiet astonishment of it. The same essential machine that Charlie Fehn sketched in the 1950s and patented in the 1960s is being bolted together by hand in the 2020s, almost unchanged because there was never much to change. It got the idea right the first time. Faster motorcycles, richer companies, whole famous markers have risen and vanished in the decades since. The Rokon just kept crawling forward at walking pace, up impossible hills, across rivers, into the places everything faster had to turn back from. It was never trying to win the race, it was only trying to arrive. And more than 60 years on, it still does. If you like the machines that win by an idea rather than by brute force, stay with this channel. Next time, another machine that broke the rules of what was thought possible and paid a strange price for it. Consider subscribing, and we will see you on the next one.